Welcome to Miller's Military Moments, a podcast about Mass Sergeant Miller's 20-year Army career. Each week, we'll deliver exciting, funny, sad, or sometimes unbelievable moments. Don't forget to visit our website at millersmilitary.moments.buzzsprout.com. Now, here's your host, Master Sergeant Jason Miller. Welcome to episode 3 of Miller's Military Moments. I'm your host, Master Sergeant Jason Miller, and I want to give a few shout outs to some people that have provided some direct feedback, comments to me, and support, and I really appreciate that. So Bradley, Javier, Katie, Dave, Arthur, Linda, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and keep the comments and feedback coming. So this week's episode is really about my arrival to Fort Hood and the first 60 days, which, I mean, it sounds like, oh, well, maybe not much would happen in the first 60 days. Typically, I don't think a lot would happen or should happen, but in my case, a lot did, and it was pretty crazy. And the more I've thought about this and even talked about it with my wife, who was obviously there with me, we thought, gosh, how did all that happen in the first 60 days? So that's what we'll talk about today. So think about a corporate move, a corporate relocation. And what I mean is, we're going to relocate from Florida to Texas, and the Army is the corporation, and they're going to pay for the movers. They're going to come and pack all of our stuff, and they're going to move it to Texas, and they're going to pay us to drive our car and all the way out there, pay us for the travel expenses, food, lodging, and all that kind of stuff. Sounds great, right? Well, it does sound great, but it doesn't quite happen in the order that is probably best. It definitely didn't happen in the order that was best for us, and I'm sure a lot of other soldiers went through this as well. So meaning that my travel expenses and other pays that the Army should give me didn't come before I started our trip. So whatever money we had from our paychecks or savings is all we had. Typically, when you are a soldier moving from one place to another, and you go to finance, when you leave your other duty station, they will give you your travel pay and your dislocation allowance up front to cover a lot of your expenses. And so during that time, remember, I'm coming from training. So I'm a brand new soldier. I'm coming from basic training and individual training where I learned how to be a helicopter mechanic. And typically those units, those posts, and those finance offices don't deal with married soldiers that are driving their own families and vehicles to their next duty station. So a lot of times it's, here's your orders, you out processed and ready go. And so as a young new soldier, I just roger that and okay, we'll figure it out, right? Like that's just what we do. So everything went well with the movers. Came to Florida, packed everything up. We loaded the rest of the stuff up in our car, plus our 2 cats, and made the trip out to Texas. We arrive to Killeen, Texas, and find a hotel for that allows pets, of course, and so that's always a challenge when you're traveling. And so we found one, and used our own money to get out there and stuff, which we were fine. So I ask at the front desk, so I need to go sign in on this particular day, the day that we arrived, check into our hotel. And what I mean is I go in and let them know, I literally sign a piece of paper saying I'm here, and they'll give me instructions on where to be the next day. So I asked the front desk, hey, where is the main gate? Where do I go? And the clerk was, pretty helpful and said, right up the road, you'll see it. You'll see signs. Great. So headed in, again, the Army, they give you a building number or something like that, and when you go into the post, you'll see signs for reception company is what it's called. So you have to look for those signs and then drive to those areas. It's not like if you're in the civilian sector, you have a particular address and then you can go to that spot and there's a parking garage or a parking lot and you go into that building. So on a military installations, there's thousands of buildings and the numbers are not easy to see from the street. And so you look for these signs, brown signs with white writing, I think are on every post that say what the building is a lot of times. And for example, reception company. So that's where you go when you're new to the duty station, and you go through there and you'll go through other things. So I go in and sign in, and so they give me instructions and say, hey, show up tomorrow at a particular time. And so I'm looking around already, and I mean, this place, there's buildings everywhere. I mean, this place looks huge. Now, I've heard that Fort Hood is big, okay? But you just don't know how big and intimidating Fort Hood is till you've been there. And there's other posts that are just as big, but it's rather intimidating when you go. So anyway, fast forward to the next day. I get in my car and I go drive. We're going to show up at reception and ready to go and get our in-processing done. It's kind of like onboarding in the civilian sector. And one of the things I'm excited about, obviously, is I need to talk to finance and hopefully get some money to cover all the travel expenses I've already paid for. And also to see if they have on-post housing available, because that's always an option, right? To live in on-post housing, you don't pay rent or utilities. So, you know, as new soldiers, a new soldier coming into the Army, we want to look at that. So as an option. So as I'm driving onto posts for the first time in the morning, I got a clue of how big Fort Hood was. As I'm driving in, I'm probably a couple miles from the gate, the same gate I went into the night before, and all I see is a sea of red brake lights forever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how many people are coming into work, so to speak, at this particular time? Like, this is insane. And of course I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to be late. I'm going to get in trouble, like on my first, day. Like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. So, go through, I finally get to where I'm supposed to go. And, I was a few minutes late, but so were a lot of other people. And I think that at the reception company, they definitely understand a lot more there, because people just don't know how bad the traffic really is. So that was, definitely one of my first clues at how big and how many people were there. So I found out, later there was about 50,000 active duty soldiers stationed there. So imagine all their families and stuff like that living. There's a lot of people in that area, and then all these people are trying to go to work at the same time. So during reception, you go through medical screenings, you go to dental screenings, you learn about on-post services, you go to finance, which again, I'm excited about because I need some money, and, to get reimbursed for our stuff, and housing. So that's one of the on-post services you find out about. So I go to finance and, fill out all the paperwork, and they say, okay, you're going to get your travel expenses paid to you in 1 to 2 weeks. And I'm like, 1 to 2 weeks? Like, I don't know what am I going to do? 1 to 2 weeks? Like, man, okay. So, I'll have to address that when I get to it later, but that's what they say. That's how it works. I don't know what to do else till then. So the next thing, hey, on-post housing, right? Let's find a place to live. Talk to on-post housing services. 6-month wait. 6-month waiting list for on-post housing. So that is not an option. So kind of disappointed. Not that we were really excited to live on post. Even in 2002, it's not that they had a great reputation for, having great housing. But again, it's, you don't pay, you don't have any expenses, and it's on post, so it's hopefully closer to where you work. Granted, at Fort Hood, that was not a guarantee either. But as a new soldier, I didn't know that. So now plan B, we've got to go find a place to live off post, which now, you got to, for rent, you've got to, pay a deposit on utilities and all this kind of stuff. And so now there's like more and more money. Like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? So, and now we're still living in a hotel and getting these more and more bills. So one of the things that I had to do is I ultimately had to call my father-in-law and say, hey, can you please help us right now? I'm not getting my travel pay for a couple more weeks. I'm trying to pay for the hotel, all this kind of stuff. And the first time ever I had used Western Union, and thank God he Western Unioned us some money, and, we were able to take care of some of our immediate expenses and kind of get through some of those immediate issues, which lowered the stress and anxiety, which is good. I mean, a new place, new soldier, like a whole lot of intimidation going on. The last thing I want to do is not be able to pay my bills or find a place to live for my family, So, so that provided some less anxiety again, like I said. So now, we get through that process, and we're at the end of that week, we head to our unit, or I'm heading to the unit, and you take a bus. You take a bus to your unit, and yes, I had my car parked there, so I'm going to have to find a ride back. So I take a bus down there to my unit, and so we're driving down this road, and there's two one-way roads, and one's called Old Ironsides, and the other one's called Tank Destroyer, and I don't know if it's still the same, but it probably is. There are these things called motor pools. And for those that have never served, this is what they are. They're essentially pads of concrete with fences around them. Let's just say a couple acres for each one that house that particular unit's vehicles. So it's Humvees, large trucks, tanks, Bradleys, which are armored personnel carriers, howitzers, artillery pieces, all kinds of stuff. Motor pool after motor pool after motor pool after motor pool. I was like, holy, like this is crazy. And I still haven't seen an airfield, by the way. So no aircraft, nothing like that. Come to find out, those two roads, those two one-way roads, there are 7 miles of motor pools on Fort Hood. 7 miles. I mean, it's insane. So when you think about 50,000 active duty soldiers stationed there, 7 miles of motor pools with all that equipment, and I found out that there's actually 2 aviation brigades there. There wasn't aviation brigades at the time, but 2 aviation units, 2 different airfields. You kind of start to get the sense of how big this place is, and obviously intimidating for a new soldier trying to find their way around and do stuff here. So yeah, just crazy. So we're taking the bus, down to the unit, and I have my paperwork with me, and then I get dropped off, and I'm basically doing some paperwork. Hey, I'm here, and they, make me fill out some stuff, and I'm kind of at a higher headquarters area. And so now I have a young man comes and picks me up that is apparently from the unit where I'm actually going to work. So now the aviation unit, which is 404th ASB, at the time. And his name is Dave, and Dave Dowell. And so he introduces himself. He's a young man from the backwoods in Kentucky, which he will tell you. And he says, hey, I'm Dave. And I kind of looked at him like, what, like Dave, like not specialist Dowell. His rank was specialist. So, I'm new, obviously. And he could tell like that I was like looking at him kind of weird, like about the whole first name thing. He says, oh man, if we're the equal rank or below, we call each other, by our first names. And I also was a specialist, an E4, enlisted 4. So I came in as an enlisted 4 because of my college degree. That's one of the perks about it. So, so I said, okay, all right, Dave, nice to meet you. I'm Jason. And so that was definitely kind of interesting, a thing to kind of figure out and then see how it plays out, as we move on. So he picks me up and he takes me down to the company area. Actually, we get down to the airfield, which is where the company area is. So I see some helicopters, not a whole lot, but I go into another office area, and I meet and to fill out some more in-processing paperwork. Like how many times I've filled out some of the same basic information is it's insane. Like the same information over and over and over and over again is really crazy. But so many of the different systems in the Army don't talk to each other, so they all have to have their own information. So I go down there, and at the company, I meet the first sergeant, and often he's called top. He's the top enlisted soldier in that company, the principal advisor to the company commander, and very important person to meet. And so the meeting definitely didn't go as I thought it would go. At first, he was kind of excited to see me, but come to find out, so he asked a little bit about my background, and so I told him, I'm a new soldier and just coming from AIT, we called it Advanced Individual Training, and he immediately was like, "What?" He's like, "So you're an E4 and you have no experience?" So they were expecting, when they saw my rank and name, that I had experience. And they were hopeful that, I had experience already working in the Army and on the helicopters and stuff. And he said, so he immediately changed his tune and said, "So you have no experience. So as an E4, you must be one of those college boys that got a bonus to come in the Army, and you're going to be worthless to us." I was speechless. I was like, Roger that? What do I say? So I did get a bonus. I did go to college, and the Army did say I could come in as an E4. I didn't break any rules to do it. That's what the Army allows and says you can do. A lot of people don't like it, but that was just what I was able to do. So I thought, oh my gosh, like this may not turn out so well. Like this is going to be a crazy experience. So I left. We walked down, and Dave said, "Don't worry about him. He, yells and goes off and all kinds of crazy stuff. We don't ever hardly see him. Don't even think about it. Just, move on." And I said, "Okay." I mean, I'm hoping he's right, but again, as a new soldier, I don't know, what is actually going to happen. So Dave takes me down to the hangar. I meet a few people in the platoon. In the platoon sergeant, and essentially, since it's Friday, it's, hey, take him back to his car and show up Monday morning, PT and physical training, and get ready to start work and figure out whatever my next processes are, right? So whatever I'm supposed to do. So Monday morning comes along, and I've got to go to PT, and I was warned about, the traffic from Dave, which I had already experienced once. Come to find out, look, long story short is, so you have to be in formation at 6:30. At that time at Fort Hood, if you don't hit the gates by 5:30, you are not making it on time. I mean, that's how it's insane. So I didn't want to be late. I don't want to make that bad impression. So I probably hit the gates at 5 and made sure I was there enough time. I get there, get to PT, do our thing, leave. And then I was told, okay, so show up at 9 o'clock at our motor pool. So again, here's this motor pool thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is what we do, right? So we go to the motor pool, and I have a patrol cap on, and which is basically the camouflage, the green camouflage hat. Looks like a baseball hat, for those of you that have never served or whatever. And so everybody else has a beret, a black beret. And so at this time, we had started transitioning to the berets as your headgear that you wear every day. And so in our formation, there's probably 700 people there in this formation, and that's our battalion formation. It's rather large. There's two of us in a PC, me and actually Dave, who I come to find out can't wear a beret for reasons I'll explain later. And so we fall into formation, and I feel out of place, but there's nothing I can do about it. Like, that's just what it is, right? So the command sergeant major, who is the E9, he's the highest enlisted soldier in the battalion. He calls us to attention, and there's a thunderous, roar of our motto, and I had no idea what it was at the time. And he calls us at ease. He immediately says, "Who in the hell is back there in my formation in a patrol cap?" I assumed he was talking about me immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I am so dead. Like, what am I going to do? And immediately my platoon sergeant, who I only met once that Friday, jumps in and says, "Hey, Sergeant Major, he's mine, brand new soldier, going to CIF, which is Central Issuing Facility, which is where we get all of our new gear at the post. He'll get it taken care of today." All I heard was, "Roger that," mumble, 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 some expletives, angry, and he moved on to something else. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, man, the first sergeant doesn't like me. The sergeant major's yelling at me for the wrong hat. Like, what can I do right here? Like, I don't, I'm just new to everything. Like, oh my gosh. So, so Dave was the one that took me that afternoon, went to Central Issuing Facility and got my new gear and, got my beret, my black beret, and I, got everything I needed to make it right, and, shaving it all down and looking okay, and, so that I can wear it to the formations, and I was good to go after that. So, one of the things that somebody had told me before I came in the Army is they said, "Look, if you're at the right place, the right time, in the right uniform, you'll be better than 70% of your peers." And I'm thinking, well, that's not even doing anything. Like, that's not even performing. That's not, like, what do you mean better than everybody? Like, I didn't understand that. But I'll tell you what, I found out quickly what being in the wrong uniform happens. And, I said, I'm not doing that again. And that was one of the key things. I want to be in the right place, the right uniform. And I want to try to get in the middle of that formation so that nobody sees me and I don't stick out like a sore thumb. I just want to do the right thing, and I'll do my thing and go from there. So, but it's interesting. They kind of told me that, and I felt that really quickly, in the beginning, and not being in the right uniform. So that all that transpires, and so I found out a couple of things. So my platoon sergeant said, "Hey, you don't have a place to live. You can go on permissive TDY." So it's permissive temporary duty. So essentially, the battalion commander and our lieutenant colonel in our chain of command, he can sign a leave form where I'm allowed to take 10 days off from work to go find a place to live. I'm like, oh, great. So a lot of times, again, coming from individual training, they don't know that you need that. Married soldiers, they don't handle that when you're coming from your previous duty station. Most of the time now, like when you leave your duty station, you get it in your paperwork before you leave, so you go and find a place to live before you even sign into that reception company, a lot of times. So I was like, man, that would be great. So we do the paperwork, and then at the company, though, so you fill out this form, and then they're like, okay, well, you have to give me a list of what you're going to do every day to justify you going on permissive TDY. And I said, well, I'm looking for a house, a place to live every day. Well, yeah. Like, what do you mean? What do you want me to say? And they're like, well, okay, day 1, looking for an apartment. Day 2, looking for an apartment. Day 3, connect my power. Day 4, I'm not making this up, people. This is exactly what they made me write down to, quote, justify me getting permissive TDY. Day 5, having my water hooked up. Day 6, having my household goods delivered. So I'm like, what? Like, this is insane. Like, but hey, I'm new, I'm young. I do what you tell me to get this process approved, right? So I can go find a place to live. So, work through the channels. It gets approved for, the end of this week. Until then, while it was working its way through the channels to get signed, I had my first opportunity at mowing grass So I was told on Tuesday, hey, be over here at this time this day to meet somebody and to do some work. And I have no idea what it's for, but it's at this motor pool again. So I'm like, oh, great, we're going to the motor pool. So I go up there and they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to mow some grass. We've got to mow this area. I'm like, mowing grass? Like, what? And so sure enough, a bunch of soldiers were tasked with going mowing the grass in this area and weed eating and stuff. We have one mower. There's no gas. We have to go and purchase the gas ourselves. I'm like, what? Like, no way, man. So all that happens. And at one point, I had this big screwdriver that I'm using to dig the grass that's in between the cracks in the concrete, like on the side, like digging the big weeds coming out using this big old flat tip screwdriver. I'm like, man, this is the Army. This is Army aviation right here. We have a big motor pool full of trucks everywhere, and I'm mowing grass. Like, wow. I'm like, this is what I signed up for. So that was, kind of interesting. And I remember calling my dad that week and saying, Dad, you're not going to believe what I did to serve our country today. And I was mowing some grass and pulling the weeds. I'll tell you what, that was my first time, but it wasn't my last time. I'll tell you that. We did a lot of mowing grass in our time. So, hey, so I finally get permissive TDY. We get that time. We go find a place to live. We find an apartment. All that kind of stuff. We had just enough money to get the deposit, all those kinds of things. So when I come back from permissive TDY, my platoon sergeant asked to look at my we call it our LES, our leave and earning statement, which is like our check stub. And so he looks at it and he notices that I didn't get paid my dislocation allowance, which is like a couple $1,000 and used for deposits on your rent, deposits on your utilities, and all kinds of stuff when you move. And so I was like, okay. So again, I was a new soldier, had no idea that you're supposed to get that. And so he takes me to finance and gets me that money. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like talk about a godsend. Like, thankful. I mean, we needed it. It was, well-timed. And thanks for my platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class J at the time. He became a first sergeant and retired, but he was a big positive influence on me at the time and definitely helped out with that, which was fantastic. So, we're only really a couple weeks into April here of 2002 when I'm getting to Fort Hood, and we're talking about the first 60 days, right? So we're really, 21 days into this. So now I got to go to the field. I got to pack my stuff. What does the field mean, especially, to those that haven't served? So I've got to go basically camp for a week out in the training areas, and we do individual and collective training out there as soldiers. And so I've got to pack my stuff and go to the field for a week. We had just gotten our household goods delivered while I was on permissive TDY and, got our house squared away. But so I've got to go to the field for a week. So I go to the field and we do some training out there. But one of the interesting things that I learned about Fort Hood, so it's the largest installation in the world, or even at the time it was. And really, it might have been for people, but it definitely was for square miles and acreage and stuff. So we're out there and we develop our perimeter for security, right? That's, we live inside the perimeter and we got to protect ourselves for the potential enemy out there. But we can't dig or create fighting positions. And can't meaning it's against the rules to dig in certain areas on Fort Hood. I can't even make this up. I mean, so as soldiers, we go out there, we have our e-tools or even other equipment that are little shovels. E-tools or entrenching tools or little shovels now on one side, hey, as a soldier, I'm like, whew, man, I don't have to dig. I don't have to take a fighting position. I'm happy about that, really. Like, I don't want to, really do that. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? So what we do is we just go and find a bunch of sticks and logs and kind of create, our own little barriers and kind of fighting positions to do our training and stuff like that. So the story behind No Dig is this. The federal government leases much of our military property from landowners, and they have for decades upon decades and probably centuries. So they lease the property, and then they still allow the landowners to use it for their cattle and everything else. Well, if we dig holes and obviously don't fill them in properly, cattle and some of their animals could step in and break their legs. That costs them a lot of money. And if that were to actually happen, then the government has to pay so many generations of that cattle to that landowner. So there you go, no dig zone. Certain areas you can, but in aviation, again, they don't expect us to do a lot of this kind of training / fighting. So they send us to the no dig areas and make us, do make believe fighting positions and stuff like that. So that was another thing that I learned right away. So I get to the field, we do our thing out there, no dig in that area. So I come back from the field, and then I'm told, hey, you're going to go to NTC for a month, National Training Center. Listen, it's not even the end of April yet, and I barely know where I live. And now they're telling me I'm going to go to NTC. I have really no idea what that is. They just tell me, look, it's a training area out in the desert. It's in California, and you're going to go train for 30 days. You're going to be a small representative of our unit. And since you're the new guy, you're going. I'm like, well, okay, like anything else, roger that. So I go home to tell my wife, like, hey, it's been great and welcome back from the field, but I'm going to have to go to California for 30 days for another training exercise. And of course, she's like, okay, like, I mean, what is she going to say? Like, I mean, she's disappointed or whatever, but like, we're just brand new and we just have to do what the Army tells us. So here I am, pack my bags. We head out to NTC, get there. I lose my personal hygiene kit out of my bag. I didn't secure it enough on the top of my duffel bag. We go to get our bags. It comes out. It was lost somewhere. I don't have my toothbrush, my shaver, my deodorant, shampoo, anything like that. So right when I get there, now somebody's got to take me over to the shopette, which is like a little convenience store, and kind of get this stuff. So that's kind of how my time started out there. We moved around a lot out in the desert. You don't take showers out there for like 14 days, quote, in the box training area. It's a pain. I was on overnight duty one night, and so I'm trying to sleep during the day, and then we didn't have a tent up. We were just using camo netting, which doesn't block all the sun, and it's really hot. And so I got sunburned, and it was like the shape of the camo netting on my leg, like all these little diamonds and shapes, and it was kind of painful but funny at the same time. And then towards the end, I have my wedding ring on. I'm not working on aircraft, so I have my wedding ring on, and I'm jumping off the side of our truck. I went to get something out of the bed of it, and I go to jump off, and my hand gets stuck on the rail. Right, my wedding ring gets stuck right on the rail, and when I was dropping, I'll just tell you that my feet never hit the ground. So my feet never hit the ground. The ring went up cut my finger, went up into the bone, all that kind of stuff. And so I have to reach up with my other hand, pull myself up to get my hand off. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what the heck? I mean, it looks pretty bad. The NCO comes and gets me, takes me to the aid station. They've got to cut my wedding ring off, use this neat little tool to cut it off, to get it off, because you can't, it's so swollen and everything, and they can't get it off. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gone for a month now. My wedding ring's being cut off my hand. Like, man, my wife's gonna be really upset about this. So they stitched my finger up. It wasn't hurt too bad. I mean, it probably looked maybe worse. It didn't peel the skin all the way off my finger. If you've seen some of those images, it got up close to the bone, but was able to be stitched up and healed. But honestly, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh man, maybe it's bad enough for me to go home. May sound, silly to some people, but being out in that training environment was not fun. So anyway, nope, I didn't get to go home early. We were almost done anyway. But yeah, so my wedding ring gets cut off, and then and stitches and stuff to help, figure it out, help it heal. And so now time to finally go home, leave this training area. I get back home, and where do I even live? Like, I've barely even been home. We're getting close to this first 60 days that we were talking about at Fort Hood, and all these things that have happened. And one more thing, really. So when I went through dental during the reception and the onboarding process, they said, you've got to get your wisdom teeth taken out. And I'm like, okay, which I did have them still. So, but it was like a mandatory thing. Like, okay. So we get back from NTC, get back to home, had a few days off since I was gone for a whole month. And then the first week back to work, I had to go on a Friday. They only did wisdom teeth extractions on a Friday because you got 48 hours off, which is what they called quarters, to heal. So I got Saturday and Sunday off and then had to be back at work on Monday. I'm not joking. Can't make this up. But you are on what's called a limited profile. So we call them profiles. It's limited duty. It's, if you're healing from an injury, the doctor says certain things that you can and can't do so that you're not going to go do physical training and hurt yourself and stuff like that. So I had to have my wisdom teeth taken out. They were taken out. Friday, I was home. Saturday, Sunday, drinking soup, eating the stuff. Get to formation Monday morning, PT. And if you're not conducting regular PT, the first sergeant always says, hey, fall out of the formation and come form up over here. And he wants to see why exactly you're not doing PT. So meanwhile, my cheeks, are the size of a chipmunks that just found the mother lode of nuts in the woods, right? Like, he found the spot, got 1 million nuts in there. This is all he needs for the whole winter. That's how big my cheeks are. And he comes up to me and says, why are you doing PT? And I said, first sergeant, I just had my wisdom teeth taken out. Here's my profile. He goes on to, say, like, how come, brand new soldier, you can't even make a good impression with doing PT, you're going to the medical, getting medical procedures, getting profiles, getting your bonus, like blah, 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 like on and on and on. I'm like, good Lord, like, this guy is so angry. And I'm just like, man, what can I do right around here? But so I went back to what Dave said early on, and, so don't worry about him. And so I did, and I just brushed off and let it go. But, sometimes that stuff, it still bothers you, because because you want to do right. You don't want to be doing the wrong thing. So I, did what I was allowed to do, and which was very little until I healed and moved on to something else. So, wow. I'm exhausted after telling the story of the first 60 days. I don't know if you're exhausted, but I'm exhausted. This is, I want to say, not normal, but really when I've talked to a lot of other soldiers, especially the married ones, which again so it's unusual. Most of the soldiers, especially coming out of training, are single. And so it's a different process coming to a new unit. But a lot of the married soldiers have gone through some of the similar things that I have. So it's not that I went through anything different than they did. I'm just sharing my story because it's a little bit different than a lot of other people's, than the single soldier story. But a lot of married soldiers have gone through the same thing that I have, so at this point it's June, 2002, getting back kind of into the unit. I'm, heading over to the hangar. I saw an aircraft once. I'm still not working on any of the aircraft. I at least know where I live. Getting a little bit more time with my wife and making sure she's getting to her, doctor's appointments as she is, pregnant and due in October. So, things are moving along. And actually, she gets a job. So in the next coming up episodes, we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. There's some instances throughout this really next 7 months that talk about her working, with how it impacted with us having one car and her working and me going to PT and then work and kind of stuff like that. And she met a really great friend that she ended up working with. And her husband was in the same unit as me. And so there was a lot of cooperation and help. And then to tell you, honestly, so that friend that we met in 2002, she is still, and I am still friends with her today. So that really turned out great. And she's been there for us for a lot of things and over the time. So definitely some interesting things to still come with that time at Fort Hood, as we're really kind of ramping up to, if you think about the time, 2002, we're in Afghanistan, but we're not in Iraq yet. And, I'll kind of come to find out a little bit coming that fall, what's going to happen and where we're going to go. And, if we're going to go anywhere, what we're going to do. And then, how do we go and how do we say goodbye and when do we leave? And there's all kinds of things that happen, but to transpire, to get us to March of 2003 when we finally do head somewhere. So anyway, hey, thanks for hanging out with me today with episode 3, and hope everybody has a great day and a great week. And until next time, see ya. Thanks everyone for listening and hanging out with me today on Miller's Military Moments. Don't forget to let your friends and family know about this podcast and our website, millersmilitarymoments.buzzsprout.com. Until next time, have fun, reach out if you need help, reach out if you can help, and make your part of the world a better place.